What's up, guys, and welcome back to Bass Fishing Tips. And in today's Bass Fishing Tips video, I'm going to talk to you guys about my favorite way to catch a bass. If I could do this 365 days a year, I absolutely would, and I would never get tired of it. It's my favorite way to catch fish, and that is on the hollow body frog. But before we get into that, number one, I just want to thank you guys for being here. Number two, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button for me. Share these videos with anybody you think would like them. And if you want to support the channel in any way, make sure and use the Tackle Warehouse affiliate links that I have in the description and in the pinned comment. I'll make sure and link all of my favorite frog fishing stuff down below so you guys can go and check it out. That's the best way to support this channel. I get a small commission off the back every time that you guys order through Tackle Warehouse. I know a lot of you guys are already shopping on Tackle Warehouse anyway, so if you would just click through my links, that would help me out a whole bunch. But like I said, frog fishing. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about things that I've learned about frog fishing over the years that has made it one of my number one go-to baits as far as top waters go, and why it has always got a place in my box, in my kayak, and in my boat, no matter what type of lake that I'm on, because that kind of leads me into tip number one. So many people relegate the frog just to fishing aquatic vegetation. You know, stuff like milfoil, lily pads, hydrilla, just anything that is in the water that fish can live around or live in that is, you know, aquatic vegetation. So many people think that's the only place that they can fish the frog. And for me, that is the furthest thing from the truth. I have caught and catch still 90% of my bass in open water and open water frog fishing. Essentially anywhere that I would fish, you know, a popper, you know, a small walking bait, a small buzz bait, a small plopper, I will pick up the frog and I'll fish it in those areas. Now, you've got to be kind of smart about this. Obviously, don't like pick it up on a wind-blown point, you know, where you would normally throw a 120 size whopper plopper and think that it's going to work. But anywhere that, you know, you're back in those creeks, back in those pockets, you know, fishing around some sort of vegetation, as far as like, you know, trees in the water, bushes in the water, laydowns or whatever it is, anywhere that you would fish a top water bait around that, whether it be a popper or a walking bait or anything, pick up the frog instead. And the reason I think that the frog is so successful in those situations is because a frog is kind of like a finesse topwater, if you think about it. You know, and I've said that before, and people always like get their panties in a wad because they're like, there's nothing finesse about a frog. And you're right. I mean, it's two giant frog hooks, 50-pound braid, 7.5 heavy rod. I mean, this is as power fishing gets. But when you think about the bait itself, unlike, you know, some walking baits, poppers, ploppers, things like this, there's no treble hook hanging off the bottom. There's no split rings. There's minimal amount of metal outside of the hook itself. It's a hollow, soft body. It doesn't make much noise, if any noise at all, and it's just really kind of a non-intrusive presentation that I think sometimes when bass have seen 1,000 walking baits, 1,000 ploppers, 1,000 poppers, that you can go back with the frog or back through with a frog and catch big, more and better fish than other people will that may not have rose up on that top water, or may have rose up on that top water and then didn't commit to it. They'll commit to the frog just because it's so quiet, non-intrusive, and does a really good job of mimicking a lot of things that bass like to eat, like bluegills and shad and stuff like that. The second tip that I can give you guys is fish this thing everywhere you can't fish all the baits that we just talked about. You know, a lot of people, when it comes to walking baits, you know, poppers, things like that, you cannot present those baits under overhangs. You cannot present those baits under docks. You cannot present those baits, you know, in a laydown, or throw it up onto a laydown and work it into the laydown or anything like that. You can't present it over a limb or under a limb because of the treble hooks. The treble hooks are going to get fouled up. They're going to get hung on that kind of stuff. They're going to get hung on that cover, and you're not going to be able to walk that bait out of there. Whereas with the frog, you can do that. You can put this thing virtually anywhere because it is probably one of the most, if not the most, weedless thing that you can throw into an area. I have put frogs in places that you couldn't get any other bait out of outside of maybe, say, a Texas rig, and even then I think a Texas rig would have got hung up in that stuff. And that allows you, again, to present a top water presentation that looks and does a really good job of mimicking all the things that bass like to eat in an area where those things normally live, and in an area where normally other people aren't going to be able to get a bait to them and then be able to work that bait out of there and get a bite. And so those two things to me are the biggest things when it comes to frog fishing that makes the frog superior to other topwaters in that situation, and allows people to get really big bites. You know, I just the almost finesseness, I think that's a word, finesseness to the bait itself, and then the ability to present that type of bait in an area that you're not able to pretty much throw any other bait. Now I want to talk to you guys about rod, reel, and line, kind of talk about what I throw my frog on. Oftentimes when it comes to fishing, I say, you know, you can get away with 1 or 2 rods for about dang near everything that you do. And that is true with the frog as well. If you got a 7-foot medium heavy rod, throw the frog on it, you know, you're gonna be able to catch some fish on it. But for me, you know, when I do present that bait up under those, you know, overhangs, in a lay down, you know, up under a dock, you know, really getting it back in the nasty stuff, and when I'm fishing vegetation as well, because obviously this is a great bait for things like lily pads and aquatic vegetation when you can find it and when you can fish it. I use a specialized rod and reel for that I feel as though helps me to be a little bit more successful, because the thing about a frog is its one downfall is that body does have to collapse and it does have to reveal those 2 big frog hooks. And so you want to make sure that you've got the right rod, reel, and line to be able to get those hooks into that fish's face and then get them coming out of that cover. And so I use a 7.5 heavy extra fast rod. Now anything from like a 7.3 to a 7.6 heavy fast to extra fast rod is going to do really, really well. I'll make sure and link my rod down below so you guys can check it out. But this is a Fenwick World Class is the one I'm using. But I go with that really, really heavy rod for 2 reasons. Number one, again, I'm trying to set the hook. I'm trying to get those 2 frog hooks exposed, and I'm trying to get them into that fish's face. So that's the first job of the rod. The second job of the rod is if I do have them marred back up in a lay down, over a limb, you know, around a boat dock post, whatever it may be, or in, again, that vegetation, I want to be able to hit those fish hard, get their head turned towards me, and then get them coming out of that stuff, because that's where you're going to lose a majority of your fish, is not actually being able to get the hooks into their face and then get them out of that stuff before they wrap you up in something and pull the hook out or pop the hook out of their face. And so being able to hit the fish hard, turn them towards you, and get them coming towards you is, to me, the most important thing to do with a frog, and that's why I use such a heavy rod. And then the line, 50-pound braid for all the same reasons. An additional reason being that it cuts through vegetation really, really well. So if you are fishing around vegetation like lily pads and milfoil and stuff like that, braid is going to cut through those things where mono and fluorocarbon will dig into those things. And so being able to cut through vegetation is really important. So that's one of the reasons I use the braid. Another reason I use the braid is just because it's like the strongest stuff that you can use, right? I mean, it's essentially rope. And so if you do get them marred up in something, you can keep pressure on them and know that you're not going to break your line. And then the reel, I'm using a Revo Rocket. It's a 10 gear ratio reel, but anything from 7 gear ratio and up is going to work. I like the Revo Rocket because it allows me to, you know, reel up slack really, really quick and represent a bait, especially if I get a blow up, the fish miss it, I can reel up, throw back in there really, really quick and walk it right through that same spot and normally get that fish to blow up again. It's actually happened to me just yesterday when I was on the water. I had a fish blow up on it, reeled up, threw back in there, walked it right in that same place, and fish blew up on it again. I was able to put them in the boat. But any 7 gear ratio reel will get the job done. But that's my rod, reel, and line setup. Obviously, this is the Berkeley Swamp Lord. It's one of my favorite frogs. They came out with this thing last year, and a lot of people, they'll look at a frog and say a frog is a frog is a frog, and that's not exactly true. I was a huge fan of the Spro Bronzeye 65 for a long time. It was a really good frog. Nori's made a frog that I really, really liked for a long time. And then the Berkeley Swamp Lord came out, and they did a really good job with this frog. It's very wide. It's a little bit heavier. It walks really, really well. And the best part is it's got a super soft body that collapses well. And that's the one thing that I love about this frog the most, is the hookups are amazing. But I'll make sure and link some frogs down below that I like, including this one. But yeah, guys, that's the bass fishing tip for today. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see some awesome frog fishing action, click this video. It's popping up right here.